Yeah, we're live.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thursday, April 2nd, House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. We are now turning our attention to S219, an act relating to the to an Energy Navigator Program report. I'm Rep. Kathleen James from Manchester.
Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury. Bailey, Lamont, too. Oh, Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southworth, Caledonia, too.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Gareth Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Putner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Spillia, Wyndham 2.
Great, and joining us in the room.
I am Steve Meyer with Con-Medi County Action Center of Addison County Energy Navigator Program.
Great, we will be hearing from you next.
Mike Roy, same affiliation.
Super. All right, for the record, Johanna Miller, Energy and Climate Program Director at the Vermont Natural Resources Council. And a big piece of my work is supporting Vermont Energy and Climate Action Network, the network of town energy committees across Vermont. So really grateful for the opportunity to be here today to talk to you guys about S219, a bill to establish a look into how we further our work related to energy navigation services in the state of Vermont. So I just want to come here and sort of just support, the bill broadly and the focus of the work that the bill is intended to examine further and ideally expand and accelerate in the state of Vermont. Just a little bit of background. I've shared some of this with you in the past, but from my community work, again, about 120 towns across the state have town energy committees, and they look very different depending on what community you are in and what state of volunteer sort of exertion or exhaustion they might have. But a lot of these groups have been helping their municipalities, retrofit municipal buildings, get solar on their schools, help, low-income households in particular and people in their communities access and understand the different sorts of energy saving, cost reducing, fossil fuel reducing strategies for their homes and businesses. And that work has proven, and that model has proven really successful. Energy committees have mostly all volunteer, mostly municipally appointed, providing a really key leadership role and in partnership often with many of the other players in the space that provide services, thankfully, to Vermonters to again, get off of fossil fuels, reduce energy costs, reduce climate pollution, et cetera. Many of the partners you've acknowledged in this bill, like Efficiency Vermont and many others. So I just want to say that, there's really important work happening in this space in Vermont. And there are a lot of really important players, and there's more to do. So just in terms of what this bill is intended to explore further, put in place a process to do that examination of how do we expand energy navigation services across the state of Vermont, building off different models, including the Climate Action Centers, a very in-depth model, which has been providing benefits to people in Addison County and a little bit into Rutland, as I understand. And that model is something that the energy committees that I've been along working with are really interested in and excited about, that sort of, need for further, for lack of a better way of saying it, handholding services. I mean, we're asking people to make, pretty big decisions in terms of investments in their homes and in their lives. And there are a lot of new technologies, tested technologies that are out there now that people can access, but they need, I think, help understanding how to access those services, how they relate to their existing heating systems in their home. For example, if they wanted to get into an electric vehicle, what that means, for example. So more support in helping people make good, informed financial and energy decisions, considering energy decisions are significant financial investments for many households. So, and at this moment in time, I think I don't need to tell you, this is a really important moment to support more Vermonters in doing this work, not only because the climate is warming, and we have a need to get off of fossil fuels in Vermont, which is an economic opportunity, but also because the cost of those products are rising. And with our invasion to Iran, the cost of number two fuel oil on average has risen by about $2 a gallon. And so we need to be helping Vermonters access incentives and services that help them get off of fossil fuels as quickly as possible for all the benefits that provides. So I just want to say, in terms of the bill in front of you, generally supportive of the bill and the process that it sort of outlines for examining how do we do this with the really rich, thankfully, network of partners and providers in the state of Vermont that are providing services, but exploring the gaps in the services that we currently have and the opportunities to fill them with potentially expanded services through SEAC or through other partners. And I'm interested in that, from where we sit in our support with energy committees, how do we help them as all volunteer, mostly municipally appointed groups provide better services as conduits to people in their communities, especially low income households that are increasingly struggling at this moment, understand the options available to them. So I just really want to say it's a cornerstone that really this is an important focus. No better time than this moment. So I have a few specific suggestions that I would want to make on the draft. Yes, please.
Sorry, before you get going on the draft, I want to thank you for bringing up the $2 increase in oil, and just ask you why we don't see that kind of volatility with electric rates in Vermont.
Well, we regulate and we set, electric rates in a very different way. We regulate our utilities. They go through a very robust DRP and IRP, processes through the PUC, and then different rate making and rate setting processes. So there's just a very different, we don't have those same levers and ways to control that when you're tied to a global, commodity market. So we'll see how this all plays out internationally, but we just don't have the same agency in the way that we do through the regulated electric sector.
So we don't have the same ability to.
We're very vulnerable and at risk, tied so closely to the global commodity market. And, side note, having read it wasn't even like, fine print, and we have a little apartment propane Renai heater. I think I was mentioning this, but I called that morning, asked the price of propane, $2.99. When my husband called the billet, they charged us $4.99 because it is at the sole discretion of the provider what they charge you at any moment in any day. So we're going to be digging into that piece further because we have a lack of sort of transparency, and there's a lot of discretion among fuel providers about what they charge.
Sorry to get us off on a team.
And I'm sorry to go down that road, but we're thinking about it, and a lot of the people that we're collaborating with at the community level, and I'm sure you're hearing about it, sort of your constituents. So there's an opportunity to do things differently, and making sure that Vermonters have the best information and access to the partners that can provide them good services to help them cut costs and transition to more fuel efficient, cleaner energy technologies. So that's what this bill, I think, is trying to help support. So just want to underscore the support for that. And a few specifics, and I left my copy of the draft over there, but I wrote down which sections. So if you don't mind, just starting first with in section 1A, when you list out, thank you, when you list out the different parties that the Department of Public Service should collaborate with, I just would highly recommend adding the Energy Action Network in particular. And I'm going to underscore this a little bit further in my testimony too, but just to say that the Energy Action Network, I think we've heard from them in the past, but they're a network of a wide variety of partner organizations, including the Public Service Department and many others. But they're doing a lot of this work right now, pulling several players and partners together to examine the sort of landscape of energy navigation services and the potential gaps and opportunities. So they are going to have a foundation of understanding, and Mike can speak to this far more because he's co-leading that process. But my recommendation is to add the Energy Action Network because there's a ton of work that's been done that would be a great foundation. for the department to pivot. Okay, specifically, on section 1A also, I would recommend, sorry, I don't have the line, where you talk about the department consulting on findings from the comprehensive process and performance evaluation. And it talks about including electric and thermal efficiency, weatherization for customers with low income, and beneficial electrification initiatives. I would add after that, including transportation. You can probably intuit that beneficial electrification initiatives might include electric vehicles, but considering transportation is 40% of where our climate pollution comes from, and often one of the biggest costs that households have to bear, I would just recommend that you specify a focus on transportation.
Hang on. Sorry, that was,
Sorry.
I just felt like you were moving.
14.
Yep, I'm
Yeah,
on line
mine's
14. So I just want to make sure, so what you're suggesting, I'm just trying to make sure that
With low and beneficial electrification initiatives, including transportation, to inform the design of Vermont community-based home energy navigator.
yep, and where I was going with that was specifically calling out transportation. I was just trying to go back and read all the surrounding language to make sure that we've already, that the whole context is probably more around thermal efficiency, electric and thermal. And you're saying we should also include transportation? I
Yeah.
want to make sure we're not tilting it toward transportation, right?
I mean, I guess if we're helping households, it is a significant focus on thermal, but I think it would be a lost opportunity if you're not, when you're in a customer, or if you're in a Vermonter's home, we're talking to these folks, talking about transportation options available to them. So,
Because we
Are you-
say on line 13, including, let's see here, focused on affordability, including electric and thermal efficiency, weatherization, very important, and beneficial electrification initiatives to inform the design. Okay, let me just think about, I get what you're saying, and I need to think about how exactly we integrate that thought.
So beneficial electrification initiatives include, in addition to EVs, what are the other things? Heat pumps,
an induction stove,
induction stove.
induction stove, love it. I mean,
Yeah.
technologies like that,
Okay,
like a heat pump, hot water heater.
yeah.
Okay,
That the gap up right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
alrighty.
And more specifically on page 2, section 1B3, where it talks about, assisting residential customers and prioritizing identified energy saving opportunities. Again, I would say very well, the department may do this in collaboration, but I would just recommending adding specifically electrification and fuel switching. To reduce heating and cooling loads that can minimize the need for installation and lower future electric grid demands on the grid. But I would add here a focus on electrification and fuel switching opportunities. And if you're open to any of these ideas, I'm happy to provide it in suggested,
That'd be great.
direct edits to the draft. And I can follow up with Alex
Okay,
and take them as you wish, obviously.
okie dokie.
Okay. Moving on, and this is under section.
Just, sorry.
Go ahead.
That seems like a strange place for that, since the point of that subsection 3 is to reduce electrical demands. And fuel switching raises electric demands, so I don't know how that fits in that section.
Well, maybe it's another section.
It might be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
a new sub. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just jotting down general thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay,
Point taken, but I will suggest it as standalone and you can consider.
okay,
Section 1C, on or before March 1st, 2027, the department shall submit a report. I have two things here. I would recommend changing to January 1st of 2027.
Yeah, I wondered about that date. Do you know how that came to be? That's like right before crossover.
Yeah. And I don't know how that came to be, but again, you will hear, I think, more from Mike, and if you need, maybe from the Energy Action Network themselves, but there's a tremendous amount of work happening
Already
right now that is open and transparent and is a foundation of work to build from. So ideally, the department has significant partnership and just a foundation that they can work from.
Rep Safford?
That may be in line with DPS already issuing an RFP.
Could be, we'll have to hear from them.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Sorry.
Rep Mar? Oh, sorry.
So what work do you envision happening in this process that isn't happening with the AF right now?
I mean, I don't know exactly where EANs will land. I know they're doing like a tremendous amount of interviews, and I think maybe EAN's work is, and maybe I should defer to Mike to answer that question, but providing like really getting a baseline understanding of who's providing what services through our CAP agencies, through Efficiency Vermont, through efficiency utilities, the distribution utilities, et cetera. So maybe they're doing just the lay of the land.
So
And
it's broader than the energy companies.
Oh yes, much broader. Yeah. And Mike, ideally, you can speak to that. Okay. My last suggested change in that same section where it talks about the department shall submit a report. And I would just add on recommended program design. It says on program design. Because I feel like if this report goes to you, then it's the legislatures, will have agency and taking that input. And so we usually ask the department to make recommendations. Okay, so that's a small change and maybe it's overthinking it, but I would imagine that they provide you a report, you'll dig into it next session and then go with it, go from where you
Okay.
go from there. So that's really it. I really just wanted to thank you for taking this up, underscore sort of that we've got a great network of providers. There are still gaps in the system. I think that's what some of the work EAN is doing in this process can further identify. But I think the shared goal is we're making an energy transition. And as Representative Sibilia often says, the goal is to make sure that no one is left behind in that transition. So how do we provide services to help households, all households, understand the different, kinds of investments and energy and decisions that they can be making, ideally with some support, giving navigation services to say, Efficiency Vermont is offering this incentive today. So the goal being, we got a foundation, we got to build from it. There's no better time. We got to help Vermonters get off of our reliance on imported fossil fuels, which are driving up prices in ways that households can't afford.
Okay. Rep Morrow, then I have a question for you, Joseph.
Just curious whether there was a dollar amount in this bill before we got the contingency language.
There
It
was.
was
There was,
25,000 to the Public Service Department and 10,000 to tax.
Yeah.
Yes.
35, now contingent.
Yeah.
And to
To what's the act?
to you guys. Yeah.
Oh, it's hard.
So,
Soft C, hard C.
yes,
What's the stand for again?
Climate Economy Action Center of
Oh.
Acton County.
it's not right in here then. It's not right in the bill.
It was in the other.
SEAC, which they switched the hard and the soft B from the words.
Yeah,
So I
it's very tricky.
do have a question for Joey. Which is, I'll ask our next witnesses too. But curious why, SEAC? Curious why SEAC is actually specifically called out as a partner.
I mean, from where I sit, I think it's because SEAC has taken the leadership and reins to essentially say, we're going to go building off of the different partners that provide incentives, like our, CAP agencies and Efficiency Vermont and, the tier 3 incentives through the distribution utilities, and say, we're going to go further and proactively engage people or respond to people's interests and say, we're going to go deeper into and sit around your kitchen table and help you understand where you are in this moment in terms of how you're heating your home, getting where you need to go, mostly heating your home, and how we can help you access, different strategies to get off of fossil fuels or reduce your energy bills. So I think it's just a much deeper dive than providers have been able to land at this moment, which is one of the reasons, our work with energy committees for a long time, these groups have been trying to do that in different ways, but not in that in-depth, like human to human, one-on-one, like understanding your household energy picture broadly, and then helping you make informed decisions. They try to do that, these grassroots groups in various ways. That's one of the reasons we are very interested and have been part of this conversation, is because maybe the SEAC model, which may be the gold standard, isn't something that we can afford to, deploy statewide in this moment. But how do we learn from that model, and working with different partners and the volunteer energy committees, build on that model what we can, and help, I'm looking at, like, how do we train these grassroots groups to do that in ways that work for them, but also reaching more people who need help in this moment.
Yeah, that was just a question I had, and I'll talk to you guys about it too. Was just to make sure that I understand, if we're calling out one specific program with, as a lead partner and funding, that we're sure that this program is doing something unique, different, better than, more than anybody else in the state. So this is not what Efficiency Vermont is doing. This is not what all of our town energy committees are doing. This is a new, different, unique thing that we want to call out and learn from and build on. As opposed to like, yeah, there's 6 different people doing this and we just kind of pick this one. So that'll be important to talk about.
So all right, vision it as like a mini, like a pilot,
Yeah,
in the ground for that very in-depth, household work.
okay, Rep City.
So, as you know, I think this is the place where we will find, if the place, how to get to the answer in terms of helping all Vermonters. And so I want to find a solution to the worry that I have, which is, and I've heard also from other stakeholders, just around liability. So in this providing guidance, and so who is it who's providing guidance? Is it anybody providing guidance? Like, what are their qualifications? Is there any liability to that? So I'm worried about that, and I would love to figure that piece out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Happy to explore that further with you. I mean, I will let the CF team speak to that definitively. I think, yeah, I appreciate the concern. Just leave it there and can try to follow up and think through that further.
And thank you for persisting and trying to help us find the right way.
And ideally, that's a piece of like what, in partnership with others, the department and their exploration to help answer.
Yeah, and this might also be a question for the department. I mean, a wonderful outcome from this would be if we had really good data on what's happening in different communities, because right now there's some, but there's a lot of missing. Like I just don't have that visibility. And I love the report that I get from 211, which shows like all the calls for my district. But just the thought of having, as legislators, insight into our own communities and how they're doing. And then, I mean, imagine for the regional planning commissions, like just there's such a need for data and understanding where there might be communities that are getting behind and that might need extra incentives. I know a lot of that's happening because of efficiency of Vermont's reach, but when we talk about these local initiatives and more in-depth coaching relationship, I just wonder if some of that could be not showing up. Not-
Thank you so much
Thanks,
for the
Joey.
opportunity today and just the work you're doing in general. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right, Steve, let's just roll on.
Is it okay if Mike and I come up at the same time?
Yeah, of course.
And
you bet.
also our third team member
Is online?
is online.
Super.
And, if she's been on YouTube, I guess, but needs to switch over to Zoom.
YouTube is one way.
There she is. Excellent.
Hi, Jean, can you hear us?
And
Yep, that's Jean.
there we
Ah.
go.
Hi. We have not had you guys in to testify, I don't think, so let us quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Kathleen James from Manchester.
Scott Campbell from St. John's Party.
Richard Bailey, Memorial Two.
Chris Morrow, Windsor Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia too.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington too.
Graham Klutner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Spillia, window 2.
Great. All right. So, so we're taking up S219. Obviously supplanted we had a House companion bill here stuck on our wall. But we're working off of the Senate version now and eager to hear from you guys about the work of SEAC.
Great.
Yeah, for the
Thank you.
record, if you
Thank
can
you, Madam
introduce
Chair.
yourselves. Yeah.
My name is, and members, thank you for having us. My name is Steve Meyer, with the Climate Economy Action Center of Addison County, which oversees and directs the Energy Navigators program. And today we have, go ahead.
I'm Mike Roy from Middlebury. I'm also chair of the.
Great.
And Jean?
Jean Terwilliger from Cornwall, Vermont. Also on the board of SEAC.
Great. So, I don't know if you guys have written testimony, but if not, that's fine. Tell us about SEAC and your work.
Yeah, we prepared testimony that will sort of tag team a little bit, and
Great.
we'll each take about 5 minutes, which should leave plenty of time for your questions. And
Sure.
I can tell already there. But we'll try to, our testimony does at least start to answer some of your questions, and we can dive into that further. And I wanted to say, because I'm worrying a little bit about forgetting later, I just want to say that we definitely support the changes that Joey suggested in her testimony just before. One I'd like to call out, which is especially important, I think, is the date of the submittal of the report. I think we would really hope to be able to have a date that would allow you and the legislature in general to consider the recommendations and take action next sessions.
Super.
So with that, I think Jean is actually our lead off. She's going to talk a little bit, we're going to give just a brief interview. So what is Energy Navigators? What do we do? How do we do it? Mike will talk a little bit about other programs around the country and also about the EAN work that you've heard about. And then I'll sort of finish it up and give you a little bit more about who SEAC is and why we're doing this and why we've asked for some help this year in the legislature to do these things.
Great.
Thank you.
And do you guys have written testimony or
Yes,
do you have?
we sent
You
stuff
sent it in.
out
Great.
yesterday.
Thanks.
So
Behind the
Yeah.
times. Sorry about that.
that's great. You all set, Jean?
I am. Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. So just a little bit of storytelling to start out. So, sitting in your chilly kitchen on one of the cold snaps this winter, did you ever wish that you had someone you could ask about how to keep your pipes from freezing? A neighbor you could call on who knows enough more than you do to point you in the right direction for answers? That's the Energy Navigators program. We're providing this type of neighborly resource for home energy improvement. The Energy Navigators is locally rooted program based in Addison County that helps residents lower their energy bills, improve the comfort and safety of their homes, reduce greenhouse gas emissions through one-on-one coaching. The program is completely free and open to all residents, regardless of income and regardless of whether they rent or own their home. I come to this work as an architect with over 30 years of experience in all scales of residential design, with a focus on energy efficiency and net zero buildings. When SEAC's climate action plan showed the scale of change needed to make an impact on reducing climate pollution in buildings, I knew that creating a program to connect people with the resources available to improve their homes was not going to be easy, but could have very meaningful impact on our community. What makes the Energy Navigators different is our focus on building relationships with our neighbors rather than on paperwork or sales. Many Vermonters want to make smart energy improvements, but they face information overload, confusing options, and uncertainty about where to start. Our role is to help cut through that confusion, providing clear, practical guidance so our residents can feel confident and empowered to make a plan and take action. Here are a few questions we've helped people with. I got an energy audit, but I don't understand what the next step should be. What options will make my home more comfortable? I'm interested in getting a heat pump, but I've heard they don't work in cold weather. How will I know if it will work in my home? My basement is always damp. Will getting a heat pump water heater fix it? Our mostly volunteer navigators meet people where they are. Literally, we go into homes, assess them using building science principles, and tailor recommendations to each household's specific situation. We then connect residents to the incentives, rebates, and programs that already exist. And importantly, we stay with them over time as a trusted resource to answer questions and provide support. In this way, Energy Navigators serves as a missing link between Vermont's statewide energy programs and real household level action. Programs through Efficiency Vermont, Green Mountain Power, the community action agencies, and others have a long and successful history, but gaps remain. Many residents still struggle to access or navigate these resources. So Energy Navigators provides a last mile connection that turns eligibility into action. Our work places a strong emphasis on home electrification, one of the highest impact opportunities for reducing emissions, while improving affordability and resilience, particularly to those households who are using propane and oil, which we know there are many. By helping households understand and adopt cleaner technologies, we are directly supporting Vermont's climate goals in a practical, people-centered way. Energy Navigators' paid staff is also focused on building local capacity by training and supporting a network of community-based volunteers through national and local training programs. This model extends our reach, strengthens community trust, and ensures that this work can grow sustainably across Vermont, as many communities have talked to us about wanting to have a similar program. In short, Energy Navigators is helping Addison County residents save money, live more comfortably, and be part of the climate solution by meeting them where they are and walking alongside them. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to save up my question, I think.
Okay, so I should just say my background, I just retired from Middlebury College where I was a CIO and head the library for almost 20 years. And so a lot of the work that I do is kind of technology based and very much interested in thinking about consortia and kind of relationships with partners, which is a lot of the way that libraries work in higher ed. So some of what you'll hear from me is kind of a bias towards technology. So Jean does a nice job of capturing the kind of very human dimensions of it. And a lot of the work to make it actually be effective requires some pretty sophisticated technology in the back end. So anyway, I've got sort of 5 things I want to talk about. So first, as Jean mentioned, just to state the obvious, but hopefully just as a reminder, that energy coaching is part of the state climate plan. So if you read the state climate plan, it's identified as as one of the ways in order to get to where we want to go. And one of the things that we've learned is that these programs really help with low and moderate income households and sort of thinking about issues of equity and this just transition. And so it's really important, I think, to sort of think about who is being reached and how will these programs make sure that we reach everybody. As Joey mentioned, there's a broad interest in community-based energy coaching from across Vermont. So we get calls regularly from energy committees from across the state saying, yes, please, we'd like them too. So some of this impulse is to realize that we've landed on something that's working, we think is working quite well, and trying to figure out how do we bring that out to the rest of Vermont. The third piece I want to talk a little bit about, or I'm also open to questions about, is just the work that we're doing with EAN. So we went to Energy Action Network and said, we think that that we should be exploring what a statewide energy coaching program would look like. So we've launched a working group within EAN. We've done a bunch of work kind of doing gap analysis, thinking about partnerships, how this work is going to work, how this connects to all of the existing players, really trying to make a map of the system and trying to identify like what's working well, how would this program fit into the existing infrastructure. And so we're continuing that work. We're well aware that this bill is in motion. And so what we're hoping is that if this passes, that we would just fold that work into this work rather than having, it seems inefficient to have two parallel study groups studying exactly the same thing. The fourth point is just thinking about realizing that we're not just making this up, that this is actually happening across the country. And so we've been talking to folks in Massachusetts, which has this Community First Partnership, which is a community-based energy coaching program that actually arose from real concerns about equity concerns. So they realized that the energy efficiency utility was collecting all the money they were collecting. Most of it was going to wealthy communities. And so the less wealthy communities were actually paying in more than they were getting out. And so one of the solutions to sort of make sure that the money was being distributed equitably was to create these community-based programs to ensure that folks in these communities were being reached. Similar program in Connecticut, also out of the efficiency utility. NYSERDA is a program out of New York that is not based out of the efficiency utility, but is doing similar work. So we're part of the EAN project is to really dig into how those are structured, how do they operate, how does the funding work, so that we could sort of see other models that we can borrow from other states that are already doing this successfully. And then the last thing I will say is that there's an organization called Rewiring America that has been really focused on decarbonization and electrification, and they've started a energy coaching program. And so they've trained, all of our energy coaches go through this program. And it turns out that they graduated, I think, about 1,800 people through this program, and they take on cohorts every 2 or 3 months, and they bring people through the program. And they realized it's kind of like graduating nurses and doctors with no hospitals. Like they have all of these trained coaches, but there's no program or infrastructure for them to plug into. And so they have started this conversation for those of us who have started these energy coaching programs. How do we learn from each other? How do we think about shared infrastructure? How do we help energy coaches that want to do this work in their community, provide them some structure and facilitate that kind of work? So that'll also inform the work that the EAN group is doing, and my hope is it will also inform this work, is trying to look up and understand what's happening in other parts of the country. And I guess I'd say the last thing is just that, as we know, we are not hitting our goals in terms of emissions, and so this, I think, is not a silver bullet. Like, putting this program in place will not suddenly get us to where we need to go. And one of the things that we learned in this EAN process is that there are all sorts of structural issues around just incentives, like having the IRA gutted did not help. Like that was going to be an enormous push to help people get into heat pumps. So part of it also is like having this program is great, but we're also going to have to continue talking about how do we actually create incentives to help make these transitions possible. So that's just to say, that it's kind of necessary but not sufficient, that there's more work to be done beyond this program, but this program could play, as Steve suggested, a sort of critical role in making sure that these transitions happen so that all Vermonters can be part of it and enjoy all the benefits. So that's it.
Great. I'm going to keep holding I now have 6 questions that I will hold.
If I answer a couple of them.
That's why, yeah, I don't want to butt in.
Well, thanks. I'm going to talk a little bit more about SEAC and our program. So Energy Navigators is really our primary signature program right now. But SEAC itself is a small nonprofit. We've existed since 2019. We've done greenhouse gas inventories for Addison County and a climate action plan for the county. But we all wanted to get more specifically involved in direct work in our communities, not just planning work or not just research, but actual work helping people. And so that led to Energy Navigators. We were all familiar with the existing programs, but we knew there were gaps. And so we developed from the ground up the pieces we thought were necessary to be able to meet with homeowners and renters, provide them the advice that they really need, provide a roadmap, help them with how do we get started and how do we keep going. A really important component that we do that no one else does is to stay with clients over time. So we have reminders built into the CRM, the customer relation database that Mike helped us develop, so that we get back in touch with people after 3 months or 6 months or a year. We're back in touch with them to say, okay, what help do you need now, and how can we help with that? Part of the impetus, we asked our legislators to put forward this legislation, and Ruth Hardy, Senator Hardy in the Senate was the primary sponsor there. Two things, I guess I would say most to your question, or one of your questions, Madam Chair, is we do see ourselves as a pilot. We think what we're doing is both important and different and unique. No one else in Vermont is doing what we're doing the way we're doing it. That isn't to say there aren't other organizations doing important work in this field, and we do collaborate with Efficiency Vermont all the time. We collaborate with Green Mountain Power as our utility. We collaborate with our Community Action Agency, which is CDOEO for most of us, although it's different in Brandon. We do work in Brandon now under contract with them, and also work with their organizations and networks down there. And our funding that we have, our funding is cobbled together. We have several grants, including fortunately in the moment, but unfortunately for the long term, 2 federal grants that no longer exist. We won't get them again. They'll help us maintain our staff and oversee our programs through this calendar year, but we'll start to be, we'll have reduced financial sources that we know about and can depend on starting next year. So that's part of why I've asked you with even stronger language to consider the report date a little bit earlier in your session, so you can receive it and consider action next session and not delay this even longer. We are determined to continue on. We're developing, we may not be able to support the same staff level with going forward, but we're beginning to put a plan around and a path together to keep us moving, to keep us going. And Jean can talk a little bit more specifically during the Q&A about our training program and how robust it is. And so we've been successful in developing a good cohort now of about 5 or 6 well-trained, excellent volunteer navigators that we know will be able to continue to use. So I think I'll end there. Just ask for your support and that you support this bill. And I appreciate all of your time and attention. Thank you.
Great. So I've got a bunch of questions that I've been kind of saving up. So you answered a couple of them. So you guys are a nonprofit and you're primarily grant funded.
Mhm.
Do you do like an annual appeal as well?
Yes.
or-
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your annual budget?
Our budget right now that supports 2 staff, and the program cost is about $230,000.
And two part-time staff or,
1 full-time and 1 part-time.
okay,
Nearly full-time.
okay, so one part-time and, I'm sorry, one part-time and one full-time?
Full-time, yes.
Okay, and then, I wanted to understand a little bit more about, and I think you did start to answer this just about, so there's about the expertise and training level of your coaches.
Mhm.
So it sounds like could you talk a little bit more about the training? I heard about the Rewiring America coaching.
Yeah, I think I'll ask Jean to answer that question. She's more directly involved in it than I am.
Okay,
Although I've been through the Rewiring America training, I have not pursued trying to get to the point of providing energy navigation. So there are other pieces that are important, and we'll let Jean
okay.
describe those.
So yeah, just curious about the training and qualifications of the coaches.
Sure. Well, our cohort so far is, I believe, all or mostly are all retired people who have some sort of technical background and some sort of interest in this. Either they've done significant work to their own homes, built net zero homes. So they are very interested in this area of expertise already. And then we ask them to all go through the Rewiring America program, which gives them basic building science training, also talks about how to work with individual clients, the questions to ask, how to approach things, and asks everyone who goes through that program to do sort of a capstone that they actually do an energy audit and provide that information to graduate from the program. And then what we've done is we meet monthly with our cohort and we bring in speakers. We have just had our annual update from Efficiency Vermont and from CVOEO, the person who manages their weatherization program. So they come in every year and tell us what's new with their programs, what they see coming down the line. So we know how to refer people. We have seen, we've talked to many, many people who had no idea that they were actually eligible for CVOEO's weatherization services. And so we've been able to direct them to getting those services. And then, yes, we meet monthly and we review clients that we've been meeting with and issues and talk about how we can improve the program and make modifications. And
Okay.
yeah, so, and we don't send people out on their own until they have been working with one of our more experienced people. That's either me or our staff person, program manager, and make sure that they know what they're doing.
Okay.
So just to clarify that's so they basically shadow. So we try to go with 2 people to each house, and we'll generally have a more senior person, and then somebody who's in training will tag along, and then they start to learn the system, and at some point they'll feel comfortable, and then they can become the lead person, and maybe they bring along a more junior person.
Okay.
And then I guess the other thing to say is that they do the reports that we write. Jean or Shannon review them before they go out, so we don't let the volunteers don't get to send the final report to the client until it's been reviewed by either Jean or Shannon or our experts.
Okay. I've just got a few more and then I'm gonna let everybody, so I want to get through my list and then I'm done. We want to talk about liability. Let's leave that for later. So my last question is, before I turn it over to my committee members, how do you guys, I'm curious about your outreach, how you specifically target or try to reach low and moderate income Vermonters.
Yeah. We last summer, we realized we had enough money to support an additional staff person. And we decided what we really needed more than a fully trained additional navigator. What we needed was an outreach and marketing director that we were actually seeing. We didn't have the kind of waiting list we had expected to have of clients who people had signed up. So we needed to get more people to know about us and to sign up for us. And so that's what we've been working on the last 6 months. In our early, and to date, more than half of all of our clients meet requirements for low and moderate income. And honestly, that's without having worked very hard to direct specific marketing in their direction. So clients we're successfully reaching a lot of those populations through our normal channels, Front Porch Forum, other community events that we show up at, and we're still definitely open to we've reached out to a number of our other community partners that are working in other spaces, housing and food security and poverty, and so we are in the process of establishing those connections and getting engaged with more specifically with their networks. But we've actually done quite well, surprising to me anyway, to begin with, that over half of our clients meet those requirements.
Okay,
Yep.
so that was a lot for me. I know I saw Rep. Klettner's hand up. I know Rep. Campbell.
Just a quick reminder, when did you serve in the legislature?
I
told me, but
I served between 2003 and 2010.
And what committees?
I served on the House Healthcare Committee when it was first started as such. Used to be just a health and welfare was all together before 2000. And I served on that committee, and in 2004, they split them apart.
And
Do you really want the whole story?
Just to, no, not now with the, not
My background was in energy and environment. And the speaker at the time that I came in was of a different party. So he sort of distributed the new legislators in places where they didn't have any expertise. So I got good at healthcare. So.
got it.
Right.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
That was it.
Okay, Rep. Campbell.
Well, I have to say, I think this is exactly what the kind of thing I've been doing. I was weatherization director of CBO through the 90s, and from 2009 until I started here 8 years ago, I ran a program called 3D Thermal, which works with the apartment building owners, low-income apartment residents around the state, and that experience taught me a few things actually. That one, it's hard to start a program and grow a pipeline, and it's time. And another is that actually the navigation part or the handholding part was the biggest service that we offered, and we incentivize people to do stuff at more inflation or better ventilation or whatever, and that got them in the door. But really, what we provided was advice, and we didn't have anything to sell, so it was unbiased advice. It was just how to make the project better. And a third thing was that it's hard to get people to do something if they aren't ready to do something. So really, we work with people who are already doing a project, and then try to augment that project with a lot better a lot better energy efficiency improvements. So it occurs to me that that might be fruitful path for you all to be looking for people who are doing projects. And that's not really going to be low income folks typically. But they have the weatherization program. And the weatherization program has an energy coaching element to it, which actually started at Capstone or CAC at the time, but and then became a statewide thing. So there are all the community action programs, all the weatherization programs have energy coaching element to them. So that is, if you were to spend some time working on connecting with people who are doing a project and having your coaches help them, do hand holding with them for how to take advantage of what programs there are to make their whatever project they're doing much more efficient and much more effective in terms of efficiency. That might be a pathway to expanding your reach and then getting the word out in the community that this energy navigator thing is something that anybody can access. So anyway,
Thank you.
Just a thought. And it's a really exciting thing that you're doing and really needed. And you really need to do it statewide.
One of the things that, if I may, that is part of the work that we're doing, that we're just teeing up to happen this summer, is to do some research and provide educational materials for the contractor community in and around that serves Addison County. And predictably and a little unfortunately, there's a lot of variation across that community. We are always asked to recommend particular contractors or folks that do energy audits or whatever, and we do provide some advice in that field, but we also realize that there aren't enough of them, or they aren't. Anyway, we're working on that space as well, and we're one of the benefits I hope of that work will be to have those have better relationships with those contractors.
Yeah.
So that kind of communication that you mentioned can happen better than it might be right now.
And actually, so this dovetails with actually another thing that I'm working on, a bill that's in the Senate right now around. So contractors have to be registered. Probably aware of that, but a lot of people aren't, including contractors are aware of it. And we have mandatory energy codes, which people aren't aware of, and contractors aren't aware of. So the bill that I've been working on is H 718, which tries to raise the profile of the residential contractor registry and use that as a way to get contractors not only registered, but also obtaining voluntary certifications and things like energy codes, building science, what have you, in order to distinguish themselves in the marketplace as people who understand what they're doing. And so anyway, there might be a way to work together here on all of this. Thank you.
A couple more questions, unless other committee members have questions.
Yeah, so anyway, really exciting thing that you're doing, and I wish there was money to help you make it happen. But figure it out.
So we did have a question about just liability. How are you guys covered if somebody says, "Oh, you told me to do this and it didn't work"?
We were advised by programs in other states that, so we do have a waiver form. We ask people.
Okay.
So Jean could tell you more specifically what it says, or we could provide you with a copy.
Just send it. If you could send a copy, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And then my final question was just about your funding. So you've got a roughly 230K budget, and that's a blend of grant funding and your annual appeal and individual donations. And what's running out next year? How are things looking for FY? Are you on a fiscal year or a calendar year?
We run on a calendar year budget, but the grants that we receive all seem to run more on a fiscal year. So we're sort of toggling between the two
Yeah.
all along. The two federal grants will run out in early 27. And, you know, those are Department of Energy grants and they're just not, there's no more, nothing else happening in that sphere, as you won't be surprised to know if you didn't already know it.
How much are they?
Those total about $140,000. And we access, those are, energy efficiency community block grants. And so the communities of Middlebury and Brandon applied for those grants from the Department of Public Service. And then we've contracted with those two communities to provide energy navigator services, more specifically focused on those two communities. We also have funding from V-Light. Are you familiar with V-Light? And which is a wonderful opportunity for folks working in this space across Vermont. And we're currently in our second grant cycle with them. They don't really prefer to continue to provide grants over a long period of time. So we will have those conversations about whether they might entertain a third grant with us, given all that's happened at the federal level and in other ways. So I'm hoping we've had good working relationship with them. So I'm hopeful for that, but not expecting it. So
That's not a federal, I'm not familiar with VLAG.
VLAG is something you should, it's from a legislator policy standpoint, it's a wonderful thing. You know, I'll tell you over lunch or something. But
Okay,
they
we don't need to
the
bog down.
legislature required back as part of the merger between CDPS, the utility for most southern Vermont, and Clean Mountain Power.
Mhm.
The legislature, in order for them to approve the merger, required they set up, among other things, required they set up a nonprofit
Okay,
that would get funded with a certain number of Belco shares that it was directed would go to the benefit of this nonprofit. So they get $1 million a year roughly from those Belco shares, which their only job as a board is to distribute the funds.
and so
Is Gabrielle money that's still?
Gabrielle, yeah.
okay, so with you guys are looking at a funding cliff and,
Yeah.
or a kind of sharp drop off. And so the 10,000 that's envisioned in this bill contingent, obviously,
Well, we asked for more than that in the original bill. If you go back in history long enough, we actually asked for 120,000, I think it was.
yeah.
But that was never going to go anywhere this year. So
So we're
it
down,
got reduced over in the Senate committee.
okay, so we're down to 10, and that would be used specifically, I would imagine, to support staff time on this program
Yeah,
design.
I think the language in the bill as they passed it out of committee was to help us to be able to actively participate in the study design process.
Okay,
And so it would go to support. Yes, I'm sure you're right. Some of it will support the staff in their involvement with the study committee. Or it may be that Mike and I do most of the study committee work.
yeah, Rick Sebelia.
So I think that it is Three Rivers that has RPC that has an energy navigator that the towns have all agreed it's like a shared
Mhm.
position. Have you all looked at that type of a model?
We're familiar with that. What Mike said 8, but yeah, there's a group of communities that came together and sort of co-fund an energy staff coordinator person for the region. Joey might be able to talk more about it than specifically than I am, but we are aware of it and have approached I've started the process of approaching towns to see if they would support the work that we do. We've had only a little success with that so far.
Okay. Yeah, we worked with them pretty heavily on the
Murph.
thank you. I was gonna say.
And MERPs were great. We had 13 Addison County towns that directed their MERP grants to us and really helped with the beginning stages of the development of the energy navigator programs.
I think the RBCs would be a good
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak to your question about data, because I know that was something that you were interested in. So we have, as Steve alluded to, we built a CRM using a platform called Monday. And so we track all of our customers, our clients come through, we put them in the system and we can track them through the pipeline. Every touch we record,
Right.
we send all the emails are automated, except some of our navigators are like, we don't want any automation. This is human. So they turn the automation off and they write them themselves. But other teams are like, thank God for computers. And so we also record action. So like we try it, and this is a challenge that will say to get people to tell us, like, we put in a heat pump, we did this, we did that. So we're trying to figure out how to work with Efficiency Vermont, pass a lot, holds a lot of that information to figure out how they could learn to trust us enough to give us, so we could know actual results. So we can track contact and participation. And we're still, this is one of the puzzles, is to figure out how do we actually get people to tell us that they did something, so we can say, you know, as a result of our program, you know, 37 heat pumps were installed. We can't quite say that yet, but we've set up the system so that it can record it. We just can't get people to talk to us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know we're running late. Yeah, thank you so much for coming in, and for the work you're doing. Yeah, it's great to meet you, and you know you've been in before, but we're grateful. So
Thank you for your time.
all right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks, Gene.
Bye.
Yep.
Alex, is Alec here?
Yes.
Okay, is he in the room?
No, he is.
Is he in the Zoom room?
Yeah.
Okay. Alec, hi, I'm sorry we're running late.
No worries.
Yeah, great. Well, we're just learning all about CAP and wanted to get the department's take on 219.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I apologize I cannot be there in person. I just had surgery, so
Oh, geez.
having a little trouble putting pants on these days. Hopefully we'll be back soon enough. Anyway, so 219. I think the general position of the department is that we are supportive of exploring potential program designs for an energy navigator program. And I think this whole process, at least in part, was started by recommendations that the department made in the Affordability Proceeding Act 142 from last year. And one of our recommendations was, you know, there are myriad program options out there, but some of them are difficult to sort of fit the pieces together on. And in particular, we were looking at the opportunities for low-income participants in programs to have you know, there's some really shining examples of wonderful programs that are really turnkey solutions. They're comprehensive. They really take a lot of the guesswork and the sort of scheduling and all the complicated parts of getting contractors to do work, and they take that out of the hands of the customer and they just kind of guide them through the process. And they achieve really good results. You know, thinking in particular about the OEO, the WAP programs, the OEO, low income weatherization programs, those types of things, which are unfortunately only available to low income customers. And so what happens to the person who, you know, makes a couple $100 too much in the year and can't qualify for that program? All of a sudden, they're left to kind of have to navigate on their own the low to moderate income weatherization program, or maybe they want a heat pump and then they've got to go to a different place and navigate that process. And so our thought was it might be good to look into something that sort of helped connect those dots for people who don't qualify for the truly turnkey low income solution, but who are still struggling and still want to try to do something to help you know, lower their energy burden, and maybe don't have the resources or the time to devote to figuring that out on their own. And so that was where the recommendation came from. Another recommendation that came out of that proceeding was for the department to take stock of the myriad programs that I mentioned earlier, and really try to figure out where the synergies are, where the gaps are, just really, as I said, take stock and try to come up with a more comprehensive view of what's out there, all in an effort to kind of understand how folks can address energy affordability in a more comprehensive way. And so our contention is that while we are supportive of the effort to look into designing a program around some kind of navigator solution, and maybe that's a LMI solution, maybe something bigger, or I guess our point is we don't really know yet what that needs to look like. And so we would advocate that we finish this program review first. And we've got an RFP on the street right now. We're talking to several different vendors. But basically, I think it stands to reason that at least one of the key recommendations that will come out of this report will be some sort of navigator tool or program or something of that nature that will help address that issue, among probably several other opportunities that are identified. And so I guess it really comes down to, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves by pursuing this navigator path if there is a more comprehensive or possibly less expensive or some set of preferable options that may include this pathway, but that in taking that more holistic view, we don't want to preemptively remove anything from the toolkit, so to speak. So our ask is that we get to finish this review, which will have a report sometime, hopefully mid-October is our goal. And then from there, as I said, most likely the navigator will be a piece of one of the recommendations, and then we can pursue that according to the language of the bill.
Rep Campbell?
So I missed the beginning part of this. I missed what report are you working on? What review are you working on?
I had the same question. Could you just repeat?
Yeah, sure. So as part of that 142 report that the PUC put together, the department weighed in and provided a number of recommendations of things we thought would be helpful to look at. And one was a potential navigator program. Another one of them was sort of a more fundamental review of all of the programs. And we have a full list that I'm happy to share with the committee. That lists out. So it includes Efficiency Vermont programs, the Tier 3 programs, the OEO WAP programs, their VHFA low income financing, on-bill financing program. There's I think it's well over, maybe not well over, but over 100 programs that we identified that at least in some way touch energy affordability. And some of them are well coordinated. Some of them sort of live off on their own. They're administered by various state agencies. There's some third-party groups that do. There's even some sort of private or not-for-profit groups that administer some of them. And so our recommendation was let's do a full evaluation and sort of stack all of these programs up against each other with as apples to apples metrics as we could come up with. And look at, how effective are they at meeting sort of their stated charge? Are they hitting their key performance indicators, that kind of thing? Let's look at sort of the return for Vermonters. How well are they addressing energy affordability in economic terms? And then, provide sort of a third-party industry expert opinion on how do these stack up? What's working well? What could be improved? Where are there opportunities to maybe create more linkages between the programs, more sort of stepwise progressions through the programs, those kinds of things. And so, as I said, we've got an RFP out currently. We've got, I think, 4 contractors identified that we want to move, forward with. And our goal is to have a report that explains those results, that has that sort of matrix of, again, as the best apples to apples comparisons we can come up with to stack those programs up against each other and get a better understanding of how they're addressing energy affordability in a more holistic way. And that should be done in mid-October.
And when do you hope to award the contract?
We are looking to get the contract, I think, 3 weeks from this Friday.
Oh, great. Okay. That's specific.
I'm
Right.
making sure I got that right. So the strategy is, yeah, so 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Rep. Kleppner?
So the bill as written calls for the department to submit a recommendation on program design to this committee on or before March 1st.
Mhm.
And there is a certain amount of interest in having it arrive earlier than that. So we have enough time to work on it before crossover, which is sort of that week-ish.
Understood.
And I'm just looking at a calendar in my mind and thinking you get your report mid-October, doesn't leave a lot of weeks before January 1st or some date like that.
That was our initial concern in working with Senator Hedi and the Senate Natural Committee. That March date was fairly arbitrary. I think it was just sort of like, we're going to need more time than like a month and a half to get something together. Knowing that we still want to get it done, while there's time in the session to address this. And so I take your point, and I think that date is fungible, but just acknowledging that we want to be able to provide an adequate amount of time to do a thorough process.
Yeah, and it's not just any month and a half, it's a month and a half at Thanksgiving and Christmas and
Yeah, admittedly a difficult month and a half. Yeah.
mistakes. But
Forgot hunting season.
and
Yep, just there's a whole bunch of stuff in there.
There is.
So I just want to get a better bead then on how the work that you're already undertaking, that's already underway and that'll be due in October, fits with, doesn't fit with this bill.
I guess from the department's perspective, our report is sort of like a phase one. And then the specific program design outlined in this bill would be sort of like a phase two, I think. And as I said, I think there will be there'll be other recommendations that will require similar effort to either develop some kind of program design or some sort of new administrative structure to coordinate. And so I could envision a scenario where the program design envisioned in this bill is actually part of another phase, a bigger phase two report where the program design for a navigator program exists and some kind of coordinating structure between, I don't know, just hypothetically saying like the tier 3 programs and the TEPF programs under the efficiency utilities, like that they coordinate better there, or these are all based on recommendations we've already made, but there could be other processes that get addressed, or other aspects of the recommendations that get made that get addressed through a phase two process.
And the $25,000 allocation, if it becomes available, would support that specific phase two work for this specific component.
But specifically for the program design on a navigator, yeah. And that
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rep. Torrey?
I seem to remember that the PUC is doing some kind of a proceeding around tier 3
That's correct.
So is that somehow coordinated with what you're doing?
It is. So that is a separate but related issue. They're looking at the coordination between the EEU programs and the tier 3 programs. And that's I don't want to say solely, but it's largely being driven by the issues that we've seen around heat pump performance. And so it is related, certainly. And I think there are certain aspects of how those measures are delivered across this sort of bifurcated program structure that could benefit from some coordination, and that might look like a navigator, or it may look, different states have taken different approaches, and this is not a unique problem to Vermont. But as far as that proceeding goes, it's not directly related to the 142 stuff and the affordability stuff.
Any more questions? Yeah, Rep. Southworth.
Do you feel that this bill would be redundant to what you're already putting in place with the RFP?
It's a good question. I don't think so. I think that, I guess I would just say that there is certainly a likely possibility that some of the sort of blocking and tackling of what a navigator program might look like would come out of this, I guess phase 1 report. But in terms of getting like a robust program design that could be, bid out to a contractor or attached to an existing entity, that is a considerably more detailed and labor intensive effort. And I think that would be the key difference between, what would come out of the phase 1 report and what would be generated by the process in this bill.
So your report back after this RFP is complete would be more in line with directing how to set up the Energy Navigator program?
Yes, I think that's a good way to characterize it.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask questions.
Sure.
Okay, since I'm allowed, I will. I guess you use the language of energy affordability. A lot of what we talk about is energy affordability and fuel switching and thinking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so I'm just curious, one of the worries I have is just making sure that the fuel switching and the reduction in emissions doesn't get lost in a focus exclusively on energy affordability. So for example, the CVOEO folks that I talk with largely focus on weatherization, partly because the incentives and funding isn't there for heat pumps. And I think if they could, they would do more with heat pumps and fuel switching. But I just want to make sure that we don't lose that particular dimension if we decide if you all decide that this should be, these are going to be linked together. That's just really important dimension, at least for us, to make sure that we're focused on fuel switching and emission reduction as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, it's important to, I think the part of what gets lost in the shuffle, particularly when, like to your example of like an OEO program doing a full comprehensive weatherization job and then adding a heat pump to the home, like that is the gold standard, I would say. But I think what we're concerned with is that if it's done piecemeal or people are left to their own devices and, some of that information slips through the cracks, there is the potential for, a material harm to energy affordability if someone just goes right for the heat pump and they don't weatherize their home potentially. Or they don't do a cost analysis on what their input fuel is versus what it might do to their electricity bill. So I think that's one of the goals in providing some service like this navigator concept, is that that those considerations will be part of the process. And so, in service of those other goals in terms of reducing greenhouse gases or improving the building envelope or what have you, that the customer perspective is not sort of lost in that shuffle.
Thanks.
And I see it as like, if I'm thinking about this correctly, what I'm seeing here are two different processes driven by two different drivers, basically, that could work well together if this bill passes. So you've got your work ongoing with the priorities and parameters and work of the department, which is ratepayer protection. And so you're going to be, other considerations too, right? But so you're going to be doing your work that's ongoing and will be delivered in October with your focus and your priorities. And if this bill moves forward, then one specific component of that work could get picked up with the legislative direction provided and the legislative funding provided, saying, yep, thank you for that. And now we're going to take one component of it and please do it this way. That's how I'm seeing it. So, but it sounds like they're not in conflict.
No, I think you're characterizing it accurately.
Okay. Do we have any further questions or comments? Alex, speedy recovery. May your
Thank you.
pants be restored.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Soon,
Thanks
I
for
hope.
joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
All right. I think we can go off live. We are done for the day. We're having a weird. We're back at 8:45. Well, we have floor, and then 8:45 caucus of the whole tomorrow floor, and we're trying to reschedule tomorrow's testimony. Are we making progress with that?
Yeah, everybody has confirmed they can reschedule except for Joanna and Ben. So,
Great. Yeah. All right. So we are, folks, we are switching. We're going to be here after floor tomorrow, I think at 10:30, and not meeting tomorrow afternoon. So folks can get out and home for the holiday weekend.
So I wanted to share with you the pants I